Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Africa Energy Forum 2026. Before we start, today is South Africa's National Youth Day, and I'd like to make a point that not all heroes wear capes. And in honor of the Soweto uprising in 1976, and for the National Youth Day of South Africa, I'd like to invite everybody to be upstanding as we take a moment of silence to remember those heroes of 76. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think when we think about what people stood for in that moment, we need to stand united and remember that today. I think in the world that we currently live on, it is important that we're more united than ever. Last year's Africa Energy Forum was under the theme Africa United. This year's Africa Energy Forum is under the theme Building Africa's Industrialized Future. I'm delighted to be back in South Africa, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Minister for graciously hosting us this year. Thank you. As we look towards a more industrialized future, we have to do this together, and it's great to see so many people here again returning to the Africa Energy Forum. Our forum sponsor is Sun Africa. They have stood solidly by our side for the last 4 years, not just at the Africa Energy Forum, but right across the portfolio. And I'm delighted to welcome Goran Radjanic, to the founder and chairman of Sun Africa, to come and say a few words. Thank you, Goran.
Thank you, Simon. Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fellow builders. This is our 4th year as the main sponsor of this forum and also other portfolio events that are organized by EnergyNet. My gratitude and congratulations to the host country and the Minister, Dr. Ramokgopa, for not only solving the load shedding, but being the best dancer among the ministers of electricity around the world. So he should be actually leading this. Thank you, Minister. I'm African by choice. My home is in Africa, and my wife's side, I have 200 family members in Angola. And when I speak of this continent, I'm not describing a market or portfolio. I'm describing my family, and Africa is my continent, and after my wife, the great love of my life. I see Africa as a problem not to be solved, but as an opportunity of the century poised to lead the world in GDP growth, holding the critical minerals the entire energy transition depends on, ready to become a breadbasket of the world. So we should stop speaking of donations and social assistance. Energy is not a charity. It's one of the largest businesses in the earth. And it's time that we treat energy as such. It is time that African nations, African businesses, without help, take the central role of this opportunity. And also I'm an African nationalist, advocating strong leadership, ownership and stewardship of the Africans and not the foreign owners of the critical energy assets. Together we have 600 million Africans that will go to sleep without electricity. In 2010, 50% of not served by electricity population was in Africa. Now it's 85%. We have another problem, which is actually a good problem to have. There is 35 million Africans that are coming to this world every year. They need to be served, they need to have decent opportunities in future. So when we are solving the problem, we are not solving a static problem of electricity. We are solving the problem of ever-growing population. We are solving the problem of ever-growing demand. Currently, the demand is 1,000 terawatts per year. If we follow African Union goals, 300 gigawatts by 2030, we have to be increasing by 50 terawatts every year, and we are not. We have to be building 30 to 35 gigawatts of electricity generation every year, and only 8 to 9 gigawatts are being built every year. We need $15 to $30 billion every year, and less than $3 billion is spent on this. But I'm not standing here in despair. Something has changed, and this is changing right in front of our eyes. All we have to do is to look up to the sun. So this is the first time in African history that all the 54 countries have access to a very powerful source of electricity. And it's a very democratic source of electricity. It's electricity from sun. So if you look 1 million years ago in the Wonderware Cave, there was the discovery of use of fire by humans. So we should start thinking using the sun in much more productive ways rather than fossil energy by burning it. We are not short of energy. We are sitting on the ocean of energy that is accessible to every single African country. Solar is not only the cheapest part for Africa, it is the fastest and most sovereign path. A solar power rises every 18 months or even less. The sun falls on every square meter of African continent. This energy cannot be embargoed. It doesn't send any invoice. Every single country has access to the powerful source. It is the question not only of energy supply, but one of the national security and sovereignty. Supplying hydrocarbons has a very important role, nevertheless focusing on petrochemical production, where it's essential and needed, supplemented with other sources of electricity. Electricity generation is hampered by unpredictable market prices and geopolitical constellation that we see now for the problems caused by the Hormuz Strait. Solar energy and battery sources is not only experimental and marginal source. This is now becoming a dominant source of baseload electricity everywhere. And if we are guided by rational standards, least cost generation, and ever affordable and quickly deployable electricity storage, we are already witnessing, and the solution is arrived. From here, it will only become cheaper and technologically more efficient. In US alone, solar was 78% of new power generation, and it's increasing. The battery storage is already in gigawatt hours, and Texas and California had number of days, weeks, and in California, months of very significant renewable sources. Companies in US, Europe, and China are doing wonders, not by increasing production from renewables, but also innovating constantly, providing efficient and more economic electricity generation, transmission, distribution products, and technology. What is Sun Africa doing? This is not a theory. Our name is Sun Africa. So what we are powering Africa by the source of sun, building necessary infrastructure. We plan, develop, we arrange financing, we build, we transfer the skills, capability stays in the continent. We exclusively work with the governments, ministries, and state-owned utilities, enable technology and knowledge transfer. There is no single foreigner in our offices in our continent. We have very experienced engineers, very experienced business leader. And in Angola, we are delivering utility-scale solar and mini-grid projects during pandemic. We are now constructing the largest solar plant in Africa, 400 megawatts solar plant next to local hydro dam, which is 2 gigawatts. It's actually providing a very good interplay of power generation and hydro resources at night. We are also doing the largest electrification off-grid in Africa, thanks to US Exim Bank, EKN from Sweden, K-Sure from Korea. We are now undertaking electrification of entire 4 provinces, 65 mini-grids, 200 microgrids, 60,000 small home solar systems, and 540 sources of water purification. So this is now actually ongoing together with the Prodel, a state-owned utility, and the distribution company. So in 2 years, we will have millions of citizens in 4 provinces of Angola electrified. We are doing projects in DRC, Nigeria, Tanzania, and Lesotho. Our sister company, UGT Renewable, is doing the largest solar project in Europe. It's 1.2 gigawatts and 460 megawatt hours of batteries in Serbia. We are doing 3 gigawatt and integrating transmission lines in Iraq, 4 gigawatt, the single largest solar plant in Sonora in Mexico, and some other projects that are not being announced yet. So this is one side of the spectrum. Secondly, we developed a very important lab in Kaida village outside of Abuja, when we develop a microgrid of the new century that can serve thousands and thousands of African villages. Without this, there is no electrification in Africa. So our microgrid provides 60 kilowatts to 100 of electricity supply. Tesla batteries provide 24/7 supply of electricity. We have a 400-volt local low-voltage network, smart meters. We have a Starlink communication that enables communications, data, and voice services in the village. We have electric mobility. We actually created a water utility where 3-wheelers are supplying every household so the ladies don't have to bring water every day to their homes. We have a productive use by electric mill, and we will have a healthcare and education services. This is how you electrify rural Africa. Without electrification of rural Africa, there is no economic growth. We also have sanitation and other cluster resources of the village. Ambition is common in our sector. Executions are rare. Sun Africa is the Africa. Our engineers, teams, our people are African. A foreign company can build a power plant. Only a fully integrated African company can build an African industry. In Nigeria, DRC, Tanzania, Lesotho, Liberia, we are putting our offices. We are employing very skillful African engineer, business professional, and support staff. Let me name the hardest truth. For too long, electricity has been run not as a business, but as a social support. Sold below what it costs and delivers. Subsidies are choking governmental budgets. A sector that loses money on every customer cannot borrow its way to universal access. Solar's low cost narrowed that gap, but closing it takes courage to set cost-reflective tariffs with targeted help for those who truly cannot pay. Because what power is for, if Africa processes its own lithium, cobalt, and copper instead of exporting raw ore and importing back the finished product, energy, mining, industry are not 3 conversations, they are one. Power is a precondition of all of this. Power that is well planned and positioned near the load zones, cities, industrial parks, mining operation can be deployed quickly and without the constraints of the long-span transmission lines. One more thing, and this is very important. The present and the future of electricity backbone in Africa is dependent on strengthening public utilities, not weakening them. Without strong and efficient public sector serving as the generation, transmission, distribution backbone, there is no leap forward in Africa. How many utility executives are here from Africa? Can you raise your hands? You need to be a backbone. You need to use help of us for money and technology, but this is your country to run. This is your continent to run. But for most history, Africa was told to wait for the grid, for the capital, and for our turn. The miracle of this moment is that sun doesn't ask us to wait. It's already overhead. It's already the cheapest things we can build. The sun does not shine on some of us and not the others. It rises for every nation, every woman, every man, every child, every business, large and small. And the sun that has worshipped for millenniums will bring hope, sovereignty, and prosperity for all of Africa. Let us be the ones who finally turn on the light and do this not in watts, kilowatts, but in gigawatts, as this is what Africa needs and what Africa deserves. I'm in the conference room M17, and I can promise every government official that is serious about the rapid deployment of electricity infrastructure that we will develop, arrange 100% financing, build it and transfer the know-how. So let us stop conferencing and start building now. Thank you. Let the sun rises for everyone.
Thank you, Goran. I think I agree with just about every word apart from the stopping conferencing piece. Thank you so much. We have a fantastic year this year, and I'd like to take a moment just to run through briefly and to welcome the honourable ministers who've joined us from across the continent. We have the Honourable Minister from Ghana. It is fantastic to welcome you. The Honourable Minister who we'll be hearing from shortly from Senegal. The Honourable Minister from Uganda. Sorry, I'm reaching an age. The Honourable Minister from Guinea. The Honourable Minister from Gabon. The Honourable Minister, two Honourable Ministers from Sierra Leone, both the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Mines and Mineral Resources. The Honourable Minister from the Central African Republic. The Honourable Minister from Djibouti. The Honourable Minister in charge of Natural Resources from Djibouti, the Honourable Minister from Madagascar, the Minister of Energy and Mines from Lesotho, the Honourable Minister from Guinea-Bissau, the Minister for Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources from the Gambia, the Deputy Minister of Electricity here from South Africa, most welcome, thank you for all your support over the past few months. The Honourable Vice Minister of Energy and Petroleum from Senegal, the Deputy Minister of Information and Technology from Namibia, the Minister of State, Ministry and of Infrastructure from Rwanda, the Deputy Minister from Liberia, the Secretary of State for Land, Environment and the Ministry of Agriculture from Mozambique, the Provincial Minister of Infrastructure from the Western Cape, and of course, our next speaker, the Honourable Damilola Ogunbiyi, the Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General, the CEO of Sustainable Energy for All, and the co-chair of the UN Energy. Damilola, most welcome. Thank you.
Excellencies, honourable ministers, leaders of industry, finance, development partners, ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin by thanking the government of South Africa for hosting this important convening and for the government's continued leadership role in advancing Africa's energy and industrial transformation. I'd also like to thank Simon and the entire EnergyNet team for bringing together this distinguished gathering of leaders, investors, policymakers, and development partners. It is an honor to address this year's Africa Energy Forum under the timely theme of building Africa's industrialized future. This theme captures one of the defining development imperatives of our time. Africa, as you've heard, is home to 1.5 billion people, and the continent's population is projected to reach 2.5 billion people by 2050. This demographic transformation presents an unprecedented opportunity for economic growth, innovation, and human development. Realizing this opportunity will depend fundamentally on energy as a critical enabler. History demonstrates that no country has achieved sustained industrialization, structural transformation, and broad-based prosperity without reliable and affordable energy systems. With demand in Africa rising faster than any other country and continent, in the world, with the base projections showing the demand will triple over the next 20 years, with an even higher demand projected for the inclusion of AI. This means that the African energy and industrialization story will be completely unique and cannot mirror any other continent in the world. That is why it is paramount that it is Africans that must be the ones to design, develop, and implement solutions that are just, equitable, and sustainable for our continent. Regarding financing this ambition, it is estimated that 2.9 trillion is needed between now and 2050. However, current funding levels are far short of this target, with sub-Saharan Africa receiving only 2% of the amount invested in global clean energy sector development over the past 20 years. To bridge this financing gap, there is an urgent need for African countries to embrace innovation and disruption in their financial strategies. Domestic institutional investors such as African pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, domestic commercial banks, national development banks are critical. To demonstrate this potential, we're pleased at Sustainable Energy for All to be working with the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, Ripple, and Africa 50 to have developed the DRE Fund, which will finance decentralized renewable energy projects in Nigeria. And that's just one of the examples. This fund showcases what African leadership in institutions can do working together to address critical challenges such as equity for companies, currency volatility, and the need for local currency financing options. As energy demand grows and the adoption of renewable energy expands, many African countries' reliance on imports for modules, batteries, electric vehicles, and other components will only rise. We've already seen this happen. We're already seeing this happen. Between 2022 and 2024, African countries imported $12 billion of solar PV modules, lithium batteries, and assembled EV vehicles. The solar PV sector alone represents an opportunity of $27 billion by 2030 in the continent if all the projects we say we want to do actually get done. This is a key social economic opportunity, and the increase in energy demand must go hand in hand to build domestic manufacturing of critical components. At Sustainable Energy for All, we champion green value chains, and we're working with many of the countries here today in their ambition to catalyze local manufacturing of solar modules, cables, and assembling of electric vehicles. To guarantee Africa's energy and industrial transformation, we need all partners to work together with African governments. This includes multilateral development banks, development finance institutions, sovereign investors, philanthropic organizations, and of course, what is paramount is also the private sector. A good example of this work is Mission 300, which is the African Development Bank and the World Bank's initiative to bring electricity to an additional 300 million Africans, which is supported by the Rockefeller Foundation, the Global Energy Alliance, and Sustainable Energy for All. Mission 300 is not simply about providing electricity. It's about building energy systems that creates jobs, enables businesses to grow, strengthens local industries, and supports policies and regulatory reforms across the continent. In conclusion, I would like to say that us as Sustainable for All and our wider United Nations family look forward to working with all of you to build Africa's industrial future. Thank you for listening.
I always talk about relationships, longevity, sustainability, and a lot of these sorts of things. I'm sure I bore you rotten about it. But continuity leads to sustainable growth. It leads to faster projects being happen. And one of the challenges is the scale of the continent and how quickly projects can be developed. But when you have long-standing relationships, you can achieve so much. And relationships like with Honourable Damilola, we've known each other for 18 odd years. And it's great to see so many people that have come on that journey and are here in this room today and are really driving and leading the sector. One of the nations where we're hoping to host the Africa Energy Forum in the next few years is Senegal. We've been there over the last couple of years to explore where we can do it, how we can do it. It's important that the conference, whilst also not being on the continent, is on the continent. And we're looking forward to exploring that more. But our next speaker is Dr. El Hadj Abdulrahman Diouf, the Minister of Energy and Petroleum from Senegal. Excellency, welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much. Hello, Cape Town. Let me just share with you that I'm a former Minister of Higher Education and Innovation, a former Minister of Environment and Ecological Transition, And I became a minister, the Minister of Energy and Petroleum, just 5 days ago. And I'm really happy to have my first speech in this very lovely South African country, the Nelson Mandela's home. Excellencies, Honorable Minister, distinguished investor, development partners, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for Senegal to participate in this edition of the Africa Energy Forum. Allow me first to congratulate EnergyNet for bringing together once again the leaders, investors, and innovators who are shaping the future of African energy. This year's theme, Building Africa's Industrialized Future, could not be more timely because Africa stands at a pivotal moment in this story. For decades, our continent has been described as a continent of potential. Today, we must become a continent of delivery, a continent that transforms its resources into prosperity, a continent that converts energy into jobs, a continent that turns growth into opportunity for its people. Energy is at the center of this transformation. No country has ever industrialized without affordable, reliable, and secure energy. And no continent can achieve prosperity if millions of citizens still lack access to electricity and clean cooking solutions. Africa therefore faces a dual challenge. We must accelerate universal energy access with simultaneous use, building the energy system capable of supporting industrial growth. This is not a contradiction. It is the same mission, the mission of development. Today, Africa possesses extraordinary assets. We have abundant solar resources. We have hydropower potential. We have natural gas. We have critical minerals essential in the global energy transition. We have the world's youngest population. And partners, most important, we have ambition. The question is no longer whether Africa has resources. The question is whether we can transform those resources into industrial capacity, whether we can move from exporting raw materials to exporting value-add products, whether we can capture and greater share of the value chains that will define the global economy of tomorrow. I believe we can, but we must think regionally. The future of African energy will not be built country by country. It will be built through partnership, through interconnected markets, through shared infrastructure, through regional value chain. West African already offer important example. The OMVS has demonstrated how countries can successfully cooperate around shared energy and water resources. The OMVG has strengthened regional interconnection and integration. The West African Power Pool is progressively creating a regional electricity market capable of improving reliable and reducing costs. This initiative proves that regional cooperation is not an aspiration, it's already a reality. Now, we must take the next step. We must connect energy integration to industrial integration. We must create regional production hubs capable of transforming African resources to Africa industry. Let me offer one example. The Greater Tortue Ahmeyim project, developed jointly by Senegal and Mauritania, demonstrate how shared resource can create shared prosperity. It's more than a gas project. It's a model of regional cooperation, and tomorrow, similar partnership can emerge across the continent. Imagine connecting the vast iron ore reserve of Simandou in Guinea with competitive energy supplied through regional infrastructure. Imagine building an African steel industry powered by African energy and African resources. Imagine fertilizer plant powered by African gas, better manufacturing support by African critical minerals, data center powered by African electricity, green industry creating African jobs. This is the vision that should guide us, ladies and gentlemen. The energy transition is often presented as a global challenge. For Africa, it is also a development opportunity. We must pursue a transition that is pragmatic, inclusive, and adapt to our realities. A transition that expands access, a transition that supports industrialization, a transition that mobilizes investment, a transition that creates jobs. And above all, a transition that leaves no African country behind. To achieve this vision, we need stronger partnership between government, investor, development finance, institution, and the private sector. We need more capital. We need more technological transfer. We need more local content. And we need greater confidence in Africa's capacity to deliver. Because the opportunities are here, the projects are here, the resources are here, the talent is here. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of Africa's future will not be written by what lies beneath our soil. It will be written by what we choose to build above it. The power plants we construct, the industries we develop, the infrastructures we connect, the jobs we create, and the prosperity we generate for future generations. The time has come for Africa not only to power its economy, but to power its industrial transformation. The time has come to move from potential to performance, from resource to value creation, from ambition to action. Let us build together an Africa that is electrified, industrialized, and prosperous. Before finalizing, I hope that we'll have opportunity to visit our country, Senegal, to share opportunity. We expect also that this night, during the World Cup, Senegal will beat France to make Africa proud again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, and best of luck for this evening. I should point out a number of you would have received an invitation to the Minister's meet and greet this evening, 5:30 in the Africa Pavilion here just behind us. So we look forward to seeing you this evening then. I'm delighted to welcome our next speaker. He is our host minister. He is somebody who, when I fell on my sword and pleaded, please allow us to come back for a second year, he ran up to me and embraced me in the middle of this event in Johannesburg, and I was completely taken aback, and I realized that this was a leader who was operating on a different level. And I'm really delighted to welcome the Honourable Minister from South Africa to deliver the high-level keynote opening address, Honourable Minister Dr. Ramankopa. Thank you.
Program Director, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, and Heads of Delegations, representatives of the AU Commissioner, representatives of the regional economic communities and power pools, development finance institutions, multilateral partners and investors, leaders of industry, utilities, regulators, project developers, innovators, young professionals, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome you to South Africa and to the city of Cape Town for the Africa Energy Forum 2026. We gather on a day of profound meaning for South Africa. The 16th of June is Youth Month. It is a day on which we remember the courage, sacrifice, and historic agency of the 1976 generation. That generation of young people confronted an unjust system with extraordinary clarity and purpose. They understood that the struggle for freedom was also a struggle over the future, over education, over dignity, over opportunity, and over the right of a people to determine the direction of their own development. Their actions changed the course of South African history. They remind us that young people never merely are never merely beneficiaries of change. They are often the authors of change. They carry the impatience society needs when progress is too slow, the imagination institutions need when old answers are no longer sufficient, and the moral agency that reminds leaders that development delayed is dignity denied. As we host this Africa Energy Forum, we do so conscious that the task before African youth today is different in form, but equal in historic significance. The young people of South Africa are being called upon to confront underdevelopment, energy poverty, unemployment, climate vulnerability, digital exclusion, weak industrialization, and the continued extraction of Africa's resources without adequate value creation on African soil. This is the generational task of our time. Agenda 2063 speaks of the Africa we want, a prosperous, integrated, industrialized, peaceful, and people-centered continent, driven by its own citizens, especially its women and young people. That vision cannot be achieved without energy security. It cannot be achieved whilst millions of young Africans study without reliable electricity, whilst clinics and schools remain underpowered, whilst small businesses cannot expand, whilst minerals leave our shores unprocessed, and whilst African economies remain locked into the lower end of global value chains. Energy security is, therefore, not only a technical matter. It is about whether the next generation of Africans will inherit economies that consume what others produce, or whether they will lead economies that innovate, manufacture, beneficiate, export, and compete. That is why this year's theme, namely building Africa's industrialized future, is both timely and necessary. We meet in a world where electricity demand is rising structurally. Demand is no longer driven only by households and conventional industries. It is now being driven by digitalization, artificial intelligence, data centers, cooling demand, electric mobility, industrial decarbonization, and the reconfiguration of global supply chains. Recent planning work points to global power generation increasing by more than 7 million gigawatt hours in the current decade, and by a similar magnitude in the decade that follows. This is not marginal change. It is a recording of the global economy around electricity. The energy transition is therefore no longer only a climate transition. It is an industrial race. Countries are competing for manufacturing capacity, mineral processing, technology leadership, investment, market share, and jobs. The strategic question for Africa is simple. Will we remain suppliers of raw materials and consumers of imported technologies, or will we use this moment to build industrial capability on the continent? This question is not abstract. Africa has around 600 million people who still lack access to electricity, and close to 1 billion people without access to clean cooking. These numbers are not only energy statistics, they are development statistics. At the same time, Africa is not a continent without resources. Africa has the world's youngest population, some of the highest renewable energy potential, significant gas resources, immense hydropower potential, and a minerals base that is central to the global energy transition. Southern Africa holds a major share of the critical mineral reserves required for battery value chains, grid technologies, electric mobilities, and future industrial systems. The strategic task, therefore, is to convert Africa's resource advantage into industrial capability, and to ensure that energy becomes the platform through which we build African value chains, African jobs, and African ownership. This means aligning energy policy, industrial policy, trade policy, infrastructure planning, skills development, and investment mobilization. It means implementing the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan. It means strengthening renewable energy manufacturing and supplier development. It means supporting green industrialization opportunities, including green steel, green hydrogen, battery value chains, and the decarbonization of energy-intensive sectors. It means using our mineral endowments, including manganese, platinum group metals, and other strategic minerals to build value chains that remained on the continent. Only a few weeks ago, ministers responsible for transport and energy met in Johannesburg for the 5th ordinary session of the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Transport and Energy. The outcome of that meeting are directly relevant to this forum. On energy, we reaffirm the centrality of the African Single Electricity Market and the Continental Power Systems Master Plan. These are not abstract continental projects. They are the architecture of a more integrated African power system that can move electricity across borders, improve reliability, reduce cost, balance variable renewable energy, and unlock regional generation and transmission investments. The STC welcomed progress on Africa's single electricity market, in short, AFSEM, including regional regulatory readiness, institutional strengthening, and regional power market development. It also called for AFSEM, the Continental Power System Master Plan, and the African 10-year Infrastructure Investment Plan to be aligned with Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa, in short, PIDA, so that cross-border energy infrastructure becomes a central pillar of Africa's integration agenda. This is important because Africa's energy challenge is not only a generation challenge, it is also a transmission challenge, an interconnection challenge, a project preparation challenge, and a financing challenge. Without interconnectors, power pools cannot trade at scale. Without strong power pools, AFSEM cannot reach its potential. Without bankable regional projects, capital will remain available in theory, but absent in practice. The 10-year Infrastructure Investment Plan for Cross-Border Interconnectivity, led under South Africa's G20 presidency, is therefore a critical instrument. It must help us to move from aspiration to project pipelines, and from project pipelines to implementation. The immediate task is to turn this plan into a credible investment pipeline, supported by bankable projects, stronger institutions, and financing instruments that reduce risks and unlock capital at scale. This links directly to the work undertaken by the Africa Expert Panel, chaired by former Minister Trevor Manuel. The central message from that work is that Africa requires a shift from a dependence to investment-driven growth anchored in African agency and global partnership. This must be the new compact. Africa is not asking the world to finance dependency. Africa is inviting the world to invest in the greatest growth opportunity of the 21st century. But we must also be honest with ourselves. Investors will not invest at scale where projects are not prepared. They will not invest where off-takers are weak, where regulation is uncertain, where procurement is delayed, where transmission access is constrained, and where policy signals are inconsistent. The responsibility for improving the investment environment rests with us as African governments and institutions. This is why state capability must become decisive. Energy systems are not transformed by capital alone. They require governments that can plan with discipline, coordinate across institutions, regulate with certainty, prepare projects properly, unlock implementation, and protect the public interest. Markets can mobilize investment, but capable states must set direction, build confidence, and ensure that energy investments serves development. Ladies and gentlemen, the geopolitical moment makes this task even more urgent. Recent disruptions in global energy corridors have shown how exposed countries remain to price shocks and supply interruptions. The Strait of Hormuz remains one of the world's most important energy choke points. Around a fifth of global oil flows and a significant share of global energy flows pass through that region. Disruptions in such corridors quickly affect fuel prices, shipping costs, fertilizers, petrochemicals, metals, food systems, and inflation. For African economies, the lesson is clear. Energy security cannot be outsourced. Supply chain resilience cannot be assumed. Industrialization cannot depend permanently on imported inputs, imported components, and imported technologies. This does not mean isolation. Africa needs partnerships. We need capital, technology, and markets. But partnerships must be structured around African development priorities. It must help us to move from extraction to beneficiation, from import dependence to manufacturing, from fragmented markets to regional value chains, and from project announcements to bankable delivery. This is particularly important in critical minerals and digital infrastructure. South Africa and the region have real advantage in minerals required for battery value chains, grid technologies, and clean industrial systems. South Africa is also positioned as a gateway for cloud services and data centers on the continent. But these opportunities require reliable, competitive, and increasingly clean electricity. If we get the energy system right, digital infrastructure and minerals beneficiation can become sources of investments, skills, industrial growth, and new demand. If we get it wrong, these opportunities will move elsewhere. This forum must also help us to confront the energy access challenge with urgency. Mission 300 aims to connect 300 million people in Africa to electricity by 2030. This is one of the most important development initiatives on the continent, but access must be understood beyond the household connection. It must power schools, clinics, irrigation, cold chains, agro-processing, small business, digital services, and local industry. Clean cooking must receive the same seriousness. Nearly 1 billion Africans will lack access to clean cooking. That is a health crisis, a gender crisis, an environmental challenge, and an economic burden. The G20 Clean Cooking Infrastructure Investment Action Plan and the African Clean Cooking Program must now move from commitment to implementation. Energy access and industrialization must be pursued together. Universal access creates social inclusion. Industrial energy creates jobs and productivity. The two must reinforce each other. For South Africa, the principle is the same. We are focused on universal access, availability, and affordability. We are working to strengthen grid, improve distribution, address load reduction, support vulnerable households, and modernize the electricity system. But we are also clear that social protection and industrial competitiveness must be part of the same energy conversation. Electricity remains a public good, even as markets evolve and investment expands. South Africa also recognizes its continental responsibility. Our electricity system is one of the largest on the continent. Our industrial base, financial sector, ports, mining capability, and energy market transformation give us both opportunity and obligation. Our success must not be inward-looking. It must contribute to the region and the continent. Cross-border transmission and interconnection must be treated as strategic economic infrastructure because regional power trade is central to Africa's future energy security. Project lists must now be converted into prepared and bankable investment pipeline, supported by credible off-takers, stronger utilities, and clearer regulatory frameworks. Regional production hubs must be developed around Africa's minerals, renewable energy potential, industrial capabilities, and the AfCFTA, so that the continent captures more value from the global energy transition. At the same time, we must reduce the cost of capital for African energy infrastructure through better risk sharing, stronger project preparation, blended finance where appropriate, and local currency instruments. The transition must also deliver tangible developmental outcomes, including jobs, skills, local enterprise development, and deeper African ownership. Distinguished guests, the challenge before us is not the lack of vision. Africa has vision. The challenge is converting vision into execution. It is converting execution into industrial capability. It is converting industrial capability into investment, jobs, and inclusive growth. The AEF 2026 must therefore be remembered not only as a forum, not only as a, my eyes are failing me now. I'll get there. I'm in denial, so I must accept it. My team is seeing me like this for the first time. Oh, it's in fact bigger. Now I can see it. Like Jenny. Oh, it works. And I see it's a lot of you. I didn't notice that. So the AEF 2026 must therefore be remembered not only as a forum where Africa spoke about its industrial future, but as a forum where partners committed to building it. The world is reorganizing around energy, minerals, technology, and industrial capacity. Africa must not stand at the margins of this reorganization. We must shape it. We must negotiate from the strength of our resources, our markets, our people, and our collective ambition. Frantz Fanon once wrote that, I quote, "Each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it," close quote. For the generation of 1976, that mission was freedom. For this generation of African leaders, institutions, investors, and young people, the mission is development, and at the center of that mission is energy security. We will betray that mission if Africa remains energy poor whilst its resources power the industrialization of others. If our minerals leave the continent without sufficient beneficiation, if our young people remain spectators in the energy economy, we will fulfill it by building reliable power systems, integrated grids, regional electricity markets, bankable infrastructure pipelines, and African industrial value chains that turn investments into jobs, resources into value, and energy security into Africa's industrial future. The time for implementation is now. I wish you well for the entire conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. You'll see in the exhibition there is the South African National Pavilion. There is also the Nigerian Pavilion. Please take a moment to go and visit everybody who's there. You will hear and see exactly what the Minister is talking about through that programme. I'm delighted to move on to the next stage of this morning, our Leadership Awards. And I'd like to invite Umpo Mokwele to come and talk and introduce this year's first Leadership Award. Umpo is a son of Soweto, and we are delighted to have you here.
Okay, thank you, Simon, and good morning. Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Heads of Mission, business and industry leaders. Now I'm standing in front of you this morning on an exciting occasion. So this is the exciting part. I'm here to present an award to an organization that has been leading in transmission infrastructure for many years on the continent. Now we can all agree that transmission is the backbone that connects industries, businesses, and communities. The Minister has spoken about that just a few moments ago. And without transmission, we cannot industrialize, we cannot leverage the significant critical minerals opportunity, accelerate our economic growth, and tap into our full potential as a continent. And now this opportunity, this company that I'm speaking about has been championing private sector participation in transmission, which is now considered the missing link. For many years, I think we've all been focusing on energy generation. Now, more and more, the key issue and what is the missing link is transmission and distribution on the continent. This company that I'm speaking about, it has taken the agenda forward in a practical and powerful way by investing over $300 million to improve transmission and distribution infrastructure. It has invested in projects such as the Amari Power Transmission Project in Uganda and the Moi Power Project in the DRC, showcasing what is possible when patient capital, innovation, and scalability all come together. And that is exactly what is required, as we know, in order to unlock transmission infrastructure projects, to integrate regional power pools, and as well as to unlock cross-border energy trading. Now, with that said, it is my privilege to present the Breaking Barriers Award to none other than, are we going to have the nominees up, Simon? No, to none other than GridWorks. In recognition of the important role it has played in advancing transmission and distribution infrastructure across the continent. It's my honor to present or invite Chris Falvin, who is the CEO of GridWorks, to receive this award to celebrate the company's contribution to advancing transmission on the continent.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mpo. Thank you, Simon and the EnergyNet team. It's a tremendous honour to receive this award on behalf of the whole GridWorks team. I also want to say thank you to British International Investment, who had the vision to set up a transmission and distribution platform, recognising that T&D investment on the continent is the missing link, and the private sector or private sector investment is necessary to help bridge the funding gap as the sector develops. My biggest thank you, though, is for the governments who've partnered with us, for the public utilities who've partnered with us and used us as an execution and financing partner to turn their vision into real infrastructure projects as well. So to the governments of Uganda, I know the state minister is here somewhere, to the governments of Ethiopia, DRC, Mozambique, thank you very much. These are collaborations, these projects, between public utilities, governments, and a private sector delivery partner. And thank you to Minister Ramakopa for the leadership he's showing, introducing the private sector into the transmission sector in South Africa as well. We very much hope to play a part of that journey in the South African infrastructure sector. Thank you.
This is like the Oscars. This is the big one. I'm delighted to welcome on stage Thuso Kwali and Emu Enki to present this year's Lifetime Achievement Award.
Hello, everyone. Every so often, we have the privilege of recognizing an individual whose leadership has not only shaped an industry, but transformed lives. Today is one of those moments. It is especially meaningful that we gather on Youth Day, 50 years after 1976, a day that reminds us that the future is built by those who have the courage to create change. As a young South African, I remember what load shedding meant. It meant studying for exams by candlelight. It meant uncertainty and opportunities interrupted. But under these circumstances, I was able to innovate a new solution for renewable energy production in South Africa. That being said, the recipients of this award understood that energy is not simply an infrastructure issue, but it's an education issue, an economic issue, and most importantly, a dignity issue. Under his leadership, South Africa moved from experiencing some of the worst load shedding in its history to a full year without a single blackout. Through bold reforms, investment in infrastructure, and a clear vision for the country's future, he helped restore confidence and hope for the next generation.
Now, when we think about the end of load shedding, we can think about it economically. We can think about how South Africa has been upgraded in terms of credit ratings and how it's cheaper to borrow money. We can think about how our GDP forecasts have also been upgraded. But more importantly is the societal impact. We can think about how this thing has helped with employment. We can think about crime, and we know that South Africa has a problem with crime. We can think about healthcare relief. But I also want to mention that this Youth Day, we can also think about the young kid who's sitting somewhere studying, uninterrupted. All these things together wrapped create stability and predictability. So we are all here today on this 16th as part of a crew that is a coordinated effort to secure Africa's energy future. And this person, this leader, is one of the main coordinators. I mean, we've all heard that he can dance, right? So we talk to this leader who has vision and who has commitment, and we welcome him here. His name translates to Black King. His name is Dr. Kgosietswe Ramakgoba.
say this is a collective effort. I'm going to ask the DM to be with me here. The DM has to come because it's a collective effort. And I'll ask Dan to come. Yes. No, I'm making this point just to illustrate the power of teamwork, and also not to distort the facts. So I'm waiting for them to not to distort the facts. I always make the point that I think in Eskom we've got, if you like, we have housed some of the best engineering capability. Not just in the country, not just on the continent, but also in the southern hemisphere. For many of you might not know, Eskom was rated the best electricity utility in the whole world in 2001, I'm sorry. So we've got a rich history of about 103 years of engineering expertise. We have built the biggest fleet of power generating units on the continent. And I must say that is the skill set that Dan and the total Eskom team, so it's about 42,000 men and women who have made this possible. As we pivot to as we are pivoting to Eskom 2.0, we'll build on the foundations that our forebears have built, and the most immediate past, the work that Dan and the team have been doing. And that's why now we're getting to do what we call Eskom Green, just to ensure that we diversify the mix within the generation portfolio of Eskom. So we're very grateful. I think what this honor does is just a reaffirmation that we are on the right path. I always make the point as I conclude. I've been telling the team that Eskom, myself and the DM, we will be the face of Eskom's failure, and they must just focus on fixing the rotating machines. We will take the public heat, the insult, and the grievance that have been expressed by our countrymen for reasons that are obvious. But I did warn them that when we turn the corner, the opposite is also true. We will take the glory. So Dan knows this very well. He was with me. He thought I was joking. This other day, we were having a meal in one restaurant in Pretoria. That's how we catch up. And when it was our turn to pay the bill, the waitress came to us, the one who was serving us. He says, "The gentleman over there has volunteered to take your bill." The gentleman stood, came to me, and said, "Dr. Ramokgopa, thank you very much for ending load shedding." Well, I didn't take the opportunity to say, "But it's Dan." I said, "No, it's me. Thank you very much." Although Dan was there with me, of course, I did say much later, politely introduced him. And I've been saying to the Eskom team, I'm exceptionally grateful of their work. I hardly pay for my meals because of the work that we have done. And today the honor, although they said the minister, but really it's for all of us. So thank you very much. Thanks. Well done, Ben. Thank you.
South Africa's energy family. Ladies and gentlemen, our next and final speaker today is somebody who I have great admiration for. I've known him for a number of years. He was the original coordinator of Power Africa, and his ability to listen and interpret and move forward is second to none. Andy Herskowitz, you know I'm a big fan. take the stage. Thank you.
My ability to listen, I've never heard that one before, for those of you who know me. First, congratulations to Minister Ramakopa and your team, and to Chris and the team at GridWorks. You're both doing outstanding work, and Chris knows I'm a huge fan of GridWorks because I feel like what they're doing is what every public institution should be doing, is taking on the really difficult stuff. Leave the easier stuff to private sector, but let the public institutions that are funded with public sector money, like what GridWorks is doing, do the difficult stuff. And that's what we're trying to do with Mission 300. I want to acknowledge all the ministers who are here. I want to acknowledge my sister, Dami Lola, and I say sister not in the African sense of the word, but I say my sister in that even though she's younger than me, she treats me like my big sister treated me, always trying to keep me in line when I'm being naughty or doing other things. So really glad to have Dami Lola here, who always is, very insightful and always rolls up her sleeves to try to get things done. This is an unprecedented moment because it's the first time I'm ever wearing readers when I'm delivering some remarks. So you all can note a theme here, which means many of us have been coming here for years, and I watched Dami Lola bring her readers, and Simon with readers, and then the minister with his readers. But literally, I've never had to do that before until today. Mission 300 does represent unprecedented collaboration. Led by the World Bank and the African Development Bank, we've set this goal of trying to bring electricity access to 300 million Africans by 2030. You all know the numbers, you all know why we're doing it, but it also represents a significant collaboration with the Sustainable Energy for All, with the Rockefeller Foundation for the Global Energy Alliance, and many other partners who've come in to commit to trying to end energy poverty in Africa. There's an unprecedented amount of concessional capital that's being dedicated to this. The World Bank has doubled down on the amount of IDA that it's bringing to this effort. Mission 300 isn't just measuring its success by the number of deals that close by 2030, but they're very clear that it's the number of lights that are switched on, and we're going to hear a little bit about the progress that we've made so far. And it's also about the delivery, and you look at things that like the Global Energy Alliance is doing. One of the things that they've done is they, along with Rockefeller Foundation and others, we've been setting up units within each of the Mission 300 compact countries to help them deliver on these compacts. There's 30 compacts so far. 6 more compacts will be launched this week, and we hope you're going to join that, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. Recently, the Global Energy Alliance convened 110 people, all Africans from 35 countries, who all got together for a week, not for an external-facing conference, but for essentially working sessions, creating this community of practice to see how are we going to deliver on all of these reforms and what can we learn from one another. So the collaboration, and seeing that this is being African-led also, is really unprecedented for one of these kinds of efforts. The impact is the most important part, and one of the things that troubles me, I always worry that someone who's interviewing is going to ask me, okay, you've got X number of people you say have gotten access to electricity, tell me a story, and tell me about a particular person. So it is important that we go and we visit the fields and visit the projects, but I was really pleased when I reached out to the World Bank and the African Development Bank for some stories. I said, all right, well, you've got your progress portal, and everybody should check out the progress portals that both the World Bank and African Development Bank have on their progress to date, but tell us some stories. And they share this story, and I'm going to do the politician thing and say, there's Fatou, who's a seamstress in Senegal, who has been able to significantly increase her productive capability, increase her sales. There's a surgeon in Burundi who shared a story about how before he was using flashlights for surgery, but now with electricity, they've been able to run a neonatal unit that allowed triplets who were born prematurely to survive. So these are real stories impacting real lives, and we all need to make sure that we're always thinking through, we can have these conferences and talk about the big goals, but what's the impact on people? And we have to be able to know and tell those stories so that we're credible. So why are we here? On Thursday, we've got Mission 300 Day, and we hope that everybody in this room will show up for that event. There's going to be 6 new energy compacts being presented. But it's not just about the 6 countries that are going to be presenting the compacts, the 6 countries, and I'll tell you a little bit about why each country should be of interest to you. We've got Gabon, that has demonstrated how privately financed hydro can work at scale. We've got the Central African Republic, which is building from solar plus storage to mini grids and broader national access. We've got Uganda, which is going to showcase its mature and growing power market and identify significant private capital needs. Rwanda, which has 82% electricity access, but it also offers one of the continent's strongest success stories, and there's always more opportunities to move to the next phase. We've got Burkina Faso that's working aggressively to close the rural energy gap by expanding solar capacity and sustainable infrastructure investment. And we've got Djibouti, which is linking its strategic location with a serious push toward solar, wind, and 100% renewable power generation. Those are little blurbs about each country. But you're going to have all the key people from the World Bank, IFC, MIGA, African Development Bank. Everyone's going to be in the room that whole day. And if you're having difficulty getting meetings with any of the people from those organizations, they're going to be in that room. So show up, bring your teams. I know I just volunteered Eric and others to say, but this is going to be your opportunity. But also ministers from all the other countries that have compacts, please show up and share your stories with those who are there about what's working, what's not working, so that we can get this right. So that's going to be at 9 a.m. in the Limpopo room on Thursday. Bring your teams. But how are we doing so far? Rather than hear from me, I'd like us to roll a few videos right now.
Today we are marking a really important milestone in our mission to connect 300 million people across Africa to productive baseload electricity by 2030. Together with our partners, we've now reached 50 million people, and that means 50 million people with power in their homes, children able to study at night, clinics able to refrigerate medicines, shops able to stay open longer, entrepreneurs able to start and grow a business. But this did not happen by accident. It happened because governments in Africa made the right and hard choices, because reforms are moving, because public financing is being aligned, because private capital is beginning to come in, and because partners, the African Development Bank, the Rockefeller Foundation, GAP, our fellow MDBs, philanthropies, investors, so many others are pulling in the same direction. The thing is, the work is bigger than one number. We're building a platform that we hope will last well beyond Mission 300. One that others can use, they can build on and scale for years to come. That's what Mission 300 was designed to do, and that platform is working. Together, people are being connected nearly double the speed before Mission 300 started. You can see it in Tanzania, where 7.5 million people have gained access to electricity since this campaign began. And by the way, that's 5 times the previous annual pace. In Ethiopia, 4.6 million people have been connected, helped by government reforms that made grid connections much more affordable. And in Nigeria, more than 4.5 million people have been connected with private sector support, just to name a few examples. If development delayed is development denied, then this is an example of development delivered. It is proof that the model works. It's a reminder, of course, to move faster, because hundreds of millions of people across Africa still live without electricity. And access to electricity is a fundamental human right. So I think our job now is simple: keep going, bring in more partners, support more governments, mobilize more capital, build something that lasts. That work continues. But I want to make sure that the people who are doing this work know that we thank them for the effort thus far, and there's another road ahead of us to get things done. That's what we must stay focused on.
Hello, everyone. It is a real pleasure to join you at the Africa Energy Forum, even if from a distance. Today is a good day for Africa. In the Mission 300, more than 50 million people across our continent now have electricity. At the African Development Bank Group, we are proud to have helped drive this milestone, and proud still that it carries Africa's own leadership at its core. You have just heard from Ajay what this connection mean in people's daily lives. Let me add one dimension close to our work at the bank. Power also means water for farms and households, medicines kept safe in our hospitals, and real opportunity for women and youth. That is why Mission 300 matters. Now I want to speak to how Africa is making this happen and where we go from here. This progress began with African governments taking on difficult reforms and putting their own national energy compacts in place. The African Development Bank Group and the World Bank Group have stood beside these governments as the co-leaders of Mission 300, turning commitment into power that reaches real homes, enterprises, and communities. The bank's role has been to invest where it counts, to take on risks others could not, and to bring private capital to table at scale. And we are not slowing down. Across the continent, the bank is preparing the next wave of projects to carry this progress further and faster. These are African solutions financed in partnership and built to last. But 50 million is just a start. Hundreds of millions of our people are still waiting, and affordable, dependable power is the foundation of the jobs, the industries, and the opportunity that Africa's young population deserves. So our commitment is serious: to keep investing, to support more governments, to mobilize more private capital, and to build energy systems that endure. Mission 300 is our North Star: to accelerate access by 2030 and ultimately to power for every African. Thank you.
50 million people. How about applause for 50 million people that all of the African governments and the banks have been working hard together on? That's fantastic. So momentum is happening, and Africa Energy Forum is a place where we're going to keep that momentum going. You know, I joked around about the readers. It means that I think about half the people in this room were probably here 10 years ago, and none of us had readers, and I bet that half the people are now using readers, which means we're all a little bit wiser, and we all have a little bit less patience for talk, and we want to see more action. And that's where Africa Energy Forum comes in. That's where Mission 300 Day comes in. So we hope you all will show up there. And I just want to leave, particularly the African government officials in the room, with a simple thought. Like, I love coming to AEF because it's where someone asked me, what do you want to get out of this week? And I said, I actually do want to spend time listening to private sector about what's working and what's not working. And I always try to distill it down to a few themes. We can have all of these compacts. They can have 20, 30 reforms that need to happen. But when it comes down to driving investments in your countries, what are people looking for right now? And I've already had meetings with companies. And it's predictability, it's scalability, it's solvency when it comes to the utility, doing the hard work like South Africa's been doing in turning around Eskom. That's absolutely critical. It's speed and it's ease of doing business. If you can master those 5 things in your country, all of the money will start pouring in, and it'll make everybody's life, including our lives, much easier on Mission 300. So thanks so much to everyone. We hope to see you on Thursday, and thanks so much to EnergyNet for giving us this platform.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this opening session. We are taking a very short break of 10 minutes whilst we bring on our next panel, which is incredibly exciting. You heard from last year, it is the South African Energy family who will be joining us up on stage. I'm delighted to welcome the CEOs of all of the national institutions.